Welcome to Globewatch with me, Charles EBUNE, Ed from Nagoya here in Japan. Well, one of the key issues confronting our world today is how to produce an agenda for peace. Generations past and current ones, plus those to come, are seeking for strategies to ensure there is a sustainable agenda for peace worldwide, and regional institutions as well as states such as the Pacific areas are streaming for such a model. Over the past few days here in Nagoya, Japan, the Japan Summit and Leadership Conference organized by the Universal Peace Federation had been on that particular element. So what can the United States, South Korea, and Japan in particular do to ensure such an agenda confronted with other pressing global issues? My guest today on Globewatch is Representative Andy Biggs from the U.S. state of Arizona, who sits in the U.S. House of Representatives, the Congress, at Capitol Hill in Washington. Andy Biggs, welcome to Globewatch.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be with you.
You and I are in Nagoya, the fourth largest community or city in Japan, to attend the Universal Peace Federation Summit and Leadership Conference, which has ended with what they call the Nagoya Declaration, and I just read a portion of it. Humanity has reached a critical turning point as global civilizations meet the first unprecedented challenges. What do you make out of that?
Well, I think what this declaration is making the point that we're facing everything from environmental challenges to military challenges or challenges to the independent nation states. We're facing every kind of threat to energy and war, and there's this notion of crisis and conflict that we're seeing happen in the world today.
Well, you just enumerated some of the challenges facing the world today. When you look at the Pacific area in particular, Japan, South Korea, and the United States associated, as stated in the declaration, that should be the third paragraph in particular. What do you think are the forefront challenges in this area?
Well, I think we're seeing the rise in this region of the Chinese hegemon. China has long wanted to project a power in the region, and now I think they would like to expand and go beyond that. So that's one problem. I think the North Korean issue, their bellicosity, that's another issue. I think and the fact that they keep, for instance, doing missile tests, that we're trying to see what's going on. I think also what you've got going on is the relationship between Japan and South Korea today, where pretty soon they will no longer be sharing intelligence. That agreement will expire and they're not going to renew it, at least as of today as my talking to you. I think the issue of Russia's desire to expand or renew its previous power position. So they have some issues there, and they're starting to work with China as well. So you see that there's this turmoil that's going on. We haven't even talked about economic issues, trade issues that are going on. Who's going to control the South China Sea? Who's going to control the minerals and the shipping lanes that go where you have just some of the most massive amounts of goods that are flowing around the world?
You just enumerated a number of geopolitical stakes. Let us unpack some of them together. President Donald Trump has established a kind of detente with North Korea. Should that be a source of worry to American leadership, to Japanese leadership, and South Korean leadership in the Pacific areas? Should that be a source of worry?
I think if you could get so where you have peace on the Korean Peninsula, even if you keep them separate states, which At this point, I think you'd probably be better off with separate states. But if you could get North Korea to stand down and be a what I would call a rational world player, a rational state actor, I think what you would have is an ability to help stabilize the region. And so President Trump's approach seems to be to provide a détente, to provide a reason for them to want to work within the region, not with China, but with all the states. That provides stability. That enhances the opportunity to have peace.
And do you think that, as the resolution indicates, it says that the leading challenges to global issues today lead, quote, to leading to global instability, which is further exacerbated by the use of power politics to change the status quo, as well by a resurgent nationalism, which heightens fears of armed confrontation. President Donald Trump, in particular, has opted in the last United Nations General Assembly meeting that the future of the world does not belong to globalists. It belongs to patriots. And if I understand that clearly, simply means nationalism. And that is what this declaration is afraid of.
I'm not going to say that I agree with that necessarily, because I think what President Trump's trying to get at is if you have weak nation states, and the places where I see weak nation states, you create a vacuum. So a number of things happen. Either you create conflict within that nation state as it's collapsing. You see the rise to power of someone who is not interested in judicious and fair conduct towards people. I think that's really what Donald Trump's getting at. I agree with that position, as a matter of fact.
What kind of American leadership will be needed in this environment in the Pacific area, where the Japanese are remodeling, the South Koreans are remodeling, the US itself is remodeling? What kind of role that we have known the US for long as the gendarme, as the policeman of this region? Yeah.
So what I would say is the fact that President Trump is actually taking on China and saying, look, you've got to be a fair actor in the region and with the U.S. That, I think, is one very strong point. The second thing that the U.S. can do is continue to encourage at least the bilateral rapprochement between Japan and South Korea. These two nations are actually, what I thought we were on a good path just a few years ago seems to have deteriorated. We want to bring that back. And I think having lines of communication and diplomatic relationship is good. And the U.S. and Japan, for instance, just had another bilateral agreement on trade.
Well, so I doubt if you have ever read Henry Kissinger's book, Diplomacy.
Why do you doubt that I've ever read it?
Sure.
I actually have read it.
Okay. When you complete reading that book, the sense you come out with is that at any given moment of human history, there is a civilization that dominates. And whether you and I like it or not, there is a civilization that disappears and another one comes in. At one moment, it was the Persians. At one moment, it was the Roman Empire. At one moment, it was the Ottoman Empire. At one moment, it is Pax Americana, if you like, the American way of doing things, which dominates the world. And that the future, the next global leader is China. So no matter the economic sanctions and pressure the U.S. places on China, the clock of history will never be turned.
I get where you're coming from. Henry Kissinger was a realist, absolutely. I happen to be a realist. But he and I disagree on a few things, takeoff points.
You want to delay the time frame. Is that where Trump is heading?
Well, yes and no. First of all, what Kissinger was talking about is balancing. Always balancing, because that is a tenet of realism. So really, if you take China and you let others balance with it. So let's say you moved India, Southeast Asia, South Korea, and Japan. You now dwarf China as far as population, as far as potential for economic growth. There are ways to contain China more than just saying, okay, well, we're going to put sanctions on them. But we would really want to make sure that we could, if possible.
Well, China is not running an ideology like the communist or Soviet era that you say you are fighting democracy versus communism, but this is power politics. At one time you rule, your time disappears, the empire collapses, and another one comes in. This is not an issue of ideological confrontation.
Well,
it is an existential issue.
Well, you're talking what I call third tier, or in realist doctrine we call that third tier. But let's just talk about China for a second. It is a heavily ideological state. You have over 1 million Uyghurs that are in basically a communist gulag at this moment. While you and I sit here calmly talking, you got the Falun Gong, which is oppressed severely for the last 20 years. You have the United States with a massive trade deficit. We created their middle class, or their nascent middle class. It's small still compared to their overall population, contextually anyways, but it's growing. We've helped give them the funds with that budget, with those trade surplus, to actually build a blue water navy and extend the rocket program, which is now very close to where ours is. These things happen whether they're ideologically or not. Maybe that's what you're saying, because the reality is, if you believe in realist type of philosophy, you're looking about balancing. I don't know that I believe in the fatalism of this era must come to an end. We've seen in the past it almost always does. Why did the Romans fail? Many would say it's because they overextended. Maybe that's part of the U.S.'s problem. Maybe it's overextended. But moving back to it, I think there are coalitions that can be built that would balance against China in this region from South Asia all the way up to Northeast Asia.
Let's talk a bit of American politics before the interview comes to an end any moment from now. You are a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and from the Republican Party in particular. One hot topic in American issue today is the impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump. First, what is your reaction to that?
Well, you're right. It is the hot topic, and then right now it's sucking all the air out of the room, so it is almost the only topic that we talk about. Of course, I oppose the impeachment, and what we're seeing happen is it's not being conducted in a normal impeachment inquiry. Normally, without getting too much into the weeds, you would have a formal declaration. There's been no formal declaration here, and they're just conducting these hearings, and they're conducting some of them behind closed doors. All of that process is odd and strange, and highly unusual in the United States of America. That's not usually the way we've done it. So it's going to keep ratcheting up. Charles, is going to get hotter and hotter.
Well, the president would say that this is another Mueller Russian witch hunt propelled by the fake news media, and I'm using his words. Do you find it funny that with the existence of FISA, that is the Foreign Intelligence Security Act, that an American president, like the transcript indicated, will request a foreign government to investigate an American citizen who potentially may be an election opponent?
So the transcript's real clear how this transpired. First of all, the FISA has nothing to do with that at this point. So
well, I was just trying to...
Yeah, no, but you're right. There's a mechanism in place called the FISA.
To call some kind of mechanisms around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but what we're talking about here is, in that transcript, they're having a conversation with the President of Ukraine, President Zelensky, and President Trump. In the course of the conversation, President Zelensky mentions the Ukraine actions in the 2016 election in the United States. They go forward, and President Trump mentions...
Well, without turning into the rubble for the moment, you and I have read that transcript, and the transcript does establish that President Donald Trump requested the Ukrainian leader to investigate the Bidens. Now, the issue of...
Well, that's a mischaracterization.
The issue of whether he pressured him is another issue.
That's correct.
But
he did mention, he mentioned, he said, do me a favor.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Agree with that. I agree with that 100%. But in the context, don't forget what happened. It was the Ukrainian president that brought that up, number one. Number two, he's not asking him to investigate him as a 2020 presidential opponent. What he's asking him for is, in 2016, the Ukrainians played in our election. We know that. They spent millions of dollars. We know that Joe Biden pressured, because Biden admitted this, we have this on videotape, he pressured the Ukraine to fire the prosecutor who was investigating the company that Hunter Biden was sitting on. Those are critical and critically important. That's all packed into
the Ukrainians have kicked on that. But let's end the interview shortly. The American Constitution says, and if I'm not wrong, Article 2, Section 4, that for a president, vice president, and other members of the administration to face impeachment proceedings, the following things must happen: bribery, treason, and acts of misdemeanor.
High crimes, misdemeanor.
High crimes. For example, a president using his office to conduct sexual abuse like Clinton did in the 1990s towards the turn of the century. Or maybe an American president attending a dinner in a foreign land, stealing food, which is a moral displacement of the United States that can fall within the realm of acts of misdemeanor. Do you find it funny that after the telephone conversation on July 25, the president says, okay, there wasn't any pressure, and days after, he comes now clearly to say, hey, look, Ukraine and China, please investigate the Bidens.
Yeah, no, so I don't think...
Why didn't he say investigate Hillary, who is no longer a potential political opponent?
Well, why did the Ukrainian president say there was no pressure, no quid pro quo? Why did the foreign minister for the Ukraine say there was no pressure or quid pro quo? What you have is, you have, for political purposes...
For how long will the Republican Party protect Trump?
Well, as long as he's innocent, and he's innocent now. He's being railroaded, and what's happening here that I find outrageous in the United States of America is you have a leader of a state having a telephone conversation. We know it's monitored. The NSA monitors it, but we have a leaker from the NSA giving it to the CIA, giving it to a third party who then files.
Why will you people not sit and grill Donald Trump for 6-8 months like you did to Hillary? You remember the Benghazi affair, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Here's the difference. Hillary Clinton was.
You remember the email address, right?
I sure do. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's my point.
And why will Secretary of State?
Well, I thought you were going to let me answer your question.
Okay.
You asked me to.
Okay.
So I thought maybe I should answer one of them.
Okay.
So here's the deal. What's going on is now a history of attack on Donald Trump. The Democrats said, Al Green of Texas said the day after he won election, before he got sworn in, he said, we need to impeach Donald Trump. January 20th, the day he got sworn into office, Democrats said, now impeachment begins. So, do you not get a little cynical about everything that comes out of where they're attacking Donald Trump to try and impeach? I do. You know why I do? Because they said they were going to do it the day after he's elected.
You said the same thing for Barack Obama, that let us make him.
No, I didn't.
When I say you, not you as an individual, the Republican Party, that let us make him a one-mandate U.S. president.
But there's a big difference. Here's the difference. One of them, it's a free election. We know there's going to be another election. The other one is you're tossing him out of office and overturning the will of millions, tens of millions of voters. That's what's happening here. That's the distinction between saying we don't like Barack Obama's policies, we want to vote against him. We want to make sure we win next time. That's a huge difference from saying we want to toss him out of office, Donald Trump out of us, because we don't like Donald Trump. And that's what's gone on since day one.
Finally.
And by the way, you are very well informed.
Absolutely.
Even though we disagree.
Absolutely. Finally, I just want to get this answered in a very straightforward manner.
Yeah.
Why would the Republican Party not even pressure Secretary of State that, look, fulfill the law, respect the law, you have been subpoenaed, bring the documents? Why would all of you at Capitol Hill be so silent about the law? This is respecting American laws.
Well, wait a second. You tell me what law that they're subpoenaing him under. You also tell me what secret laws or classification laws that they're violating. And I'll tell you what they are. They didn't pass a resolution, which is what's required to go to the floor, to give them special authority to expand their subpoena power. They're operating under what we call oversight power. When you're operating under oversight power, you have a far narrower scope. And normal impeachment means I sit on the committee. I get to help subpoena witnesses to come testify on behalf of the president.
Which of the committees do you sit in?
I sit on judiciary.
Okay, Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona. Thank you very much indeed for being guest on this program.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You are welcome. You're welcome. Excellent.
Are we clear?
Yes, we are clear.
I didn't get your...
Cesar Augusto Mba Abogo, thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Pleasure. Okay, thank you, Charles, for the question. First of all, in the last decade, we have implemented a very ambitious development plan, which we call Horizon 2020. We had the Third National Economic Conference a couple of months ago to revamp this development strategy, but in the last decade, we've made significant investment in numeric infrastructures. And the country is fully equipped with fiber optic and other infrastructures. And what we're doing now in this stage is first to try to create the right legal framework in order for us to really use this investment in infrastructure, numeric infrastructure, to boost first human development by reducing poverty, but also to use this investment, these infrastructures, to improve the economic competitiveness of the country. So we've been doing that. We've done the investment that are required, significant. This is a very small country, and the whole country is covered with fiber optic. We are connected with Cameroon through a cable ACE. That's how we call it. We are connected to South America. We are connected to Europe. We are connected to South Africa. So now is the time to create a good legal framework and also to implement policies that where are we going to be? We have a roadmap which we are pursuing, and we think Equatorial Guinea with working together with the different countries, with our brother countries, and anchoring our vision into the African trade.
If you look at the recent statistics, Central Africa is the least technologically evolving portions of Africa. Have you seen progress in the number of people who use services, online services in this country, in Equatorial Guinea in particular? Has there been an increase?
As everywhere in Africa. So the number of people using devices and all that, it's increasing. But what you said is true. This is the less advanced when it comes to technology area of Africa, which might be in the world. But we don't see that as a problem. We see that as an opportunity to really leapfrog, to jump. We've seen a tremendous increase of the number of devices in the country, but this is something different than that. What we are looking, we don't want to create a society that consume and consume and consume. We want an economy that can produce. So we don't only focus on the number of people using mobile devices and all that. We also focus on how business and company and even the public administration is using this technology. So this is the priority for us. We care about the way people, we care about closing the digital gap, which is the fight we have today, but also we care about...
You just said about the 2020 vision of your country. and you just revamped it to include new elements to make it more modern and adaptable to the changing environment. What is the place of digital transformation as priorities in this new vision of diversification?
So we have like 4 focus priority areas. The first one is to reduce poverty eradication. Second one is to boost an inclusive and peaceful society. The third one is environmental sustainability. And the fourth one is productivity and industrialization. So we have a digital agenda that is transversal to all these 4 focus areas. Because in order to really eradicate poverty, a way to move forward, to advance, will be to introduce ITC, information and technology, information and communication technologies in our policies to eradicate poverty.